Roderman, were you satisfied with the verdict of Lionel Tate's trial?
Yes, I was, particularly in the capacity in which I was handling my representation of Mark and Deweese. That was the whole idea, is to make sure that there was justice. And now, in reflection, having just recently talked to Mark about that, he and I are both satisfied with the fact that justice was had, and that obviously what people are doing now is something just over and above and for their own benefits, trying to seek some kind of clemency from the governor and obviously try to influencing the judge. However, that's not going to happen.
The crime was really terrible. I mean, the death of...
It was a brutal,
Tiffany.
vicious, first-degree murder.
But still, Lionel Tate was a child. He was 12 years old. Is it normal, do you think, for a child to get life in prison?
No, it's not normal, and that's probably why there's so much media attention here in the United States. I mean, it's a situation that involved a 12-year-old boy who brutally beat this little, beautiful, fragile girl to death, and that the grand jury was decided, the grand jury was the forum in which the prosecutor decided to take this case, and the grand jury, having heard all the evidence in this case and all the facts and circumstances surrounding the date in question here, July 28, 99, decided that he was probably guilty of this crime and indicted him for first-degree murder. And then thereafter, a 12-person jury unanimously found him guilty of first-degree murder under the there's a predicate crime of child abuse, and apparently the child abuse is the crime that they decided was involved in this killing, and that by virtue of his having committed child abuse on this little girl and her death resulting therefrom, they felt that he was guilty of first-degree murder.
But is it a way of treating a child? I mean, he is still a child, and is rehabilitation not a way also of curing?
Yes, I mean, to a great extent. I mean, I do criminal defense work primarily at this stage of my life right now, and I realize that if I had this case, I would be crying out for the same kind of mercy and consideration and compassion as other people are. But in studying the case from the perspective that I was involved in, I realized that the judge and jury really had no alternative. The only way to change the system in order to have people adjust the punishment to the crime, particularly when you take in consideration the age of the person that committed the crime, is to change the law. I mean, obviously what's happened in Florida, and probably throughout the United States, is that our juvenile justice system is archaic and antiquated. It has to be changed. I mean, I see more violence today among juveniles and youths than I've ever seen in my life. When I was a young child in a small town, nobody ever heard of these types of things, where people go to schools with guns and kill fellow students and shoot teachers and are violent. It just does not happen. And so, in light of that, you cannot punish a person like they would have in a Lionel Tate case had they charged him as a juvenile, where the maximum penalty he was facing would have been possibly 6 to 9 months of detention followed by aftercare. I mean, how does that fit this crime? With 30 to 35 internal injuries, brutally beating this little girl to death, does that fit the crime? No. And obviously now the cry is, well, life in prison without parole for a 14-year-old boy who committed a crime at 12 is not proper either. The punishment does not fit the crime. Well, doesn't that tell you there's a major gap in our system?
Absolutely. And what about the involvement of Johnny Cochran? What do you think about that?
I have a lot of respect for Johnny Cochran. He's an excellent lawyer and a good man, and he no doubt has had some very high-profile cases, as we're all aware of here. But and I think his motive is to motivate the governor, or at least the people to motivate the governor, to try and intervene here now at this stage and try to consider, along with 3 other cabinet members, to grant this boy some commutation or clemency. And I think that's his only objective. I think legally this case is strong as you could, as strong as a case as you could have in our justice system, and I believe that the appellate courts, if they're allowed to go through the process of that, would uphold this conviction.
What do you think if, for example, Governor Jeb Bush pardons him, or if he gets clemency from the court? What would you think about that? I mean, would that be suitable?
Well, you know, again, it depends upon how you look at that, because there are other children that have committed crimes as heinous and atrocious and cruel as the one that was committed on Tiffany, and they are in a situation where they're doing life in prison without parole as well. One we just had recently here in upstate Florida, and the first thing that they're going to do is say, well, hey, Governor Bush, what about us? you know.
How many children do you have in adult prison?
Apparently, from an article I recently read, there was some 74, 75 juveniles that are doing maximum security in adult prisons for criminal offenses they committed that they were indicted for as an adult. There's a large percentage of juveniles here in Broward County, Florida, that have been indicted and or charged as adults for crimes they've committed because of the nature of the crime and because the juvenile justice system cannot deal with them.
I want to come back just a little bit and talk about the plea bargain. Did you agree with the plea bargain that was offered to the boy, to Lionel Tate?
Well, as a defense attorney, I thought it was incredibly liberal and unbelievable in terms of what a deal this kid's going to get. And I was absolutely shocked and amazed that they did not take the deal. And obviously I was right, because in retrospect, looking back now, that was an unbelievable deal. 3 years in a juvenile detention setting, followed by 1 year of house arrest, followed by 10 years of probation with community service, psychological counseling. Unbelievable. I don't think he ever would have made it. I think he would have violated his house arrest or probation probably within days or weeks or months, and probably would have gotten or received a lot more serious sentence than the 3 years. But at least he had an opportunity to rehabilitate himself and you know, become a productive citizen. And now, of course, he's in prison for life.
It's amazing from a European point of view. I mean, this difference between the plea bargain that was refused and now the life in prison.
Right.
It's amazing.
It is amazing. And as we discussed previously, I guess the case could have initiated differently, but the prosecutor, from what he tells us and from what I know of the system, had no alternative but to present this case to a grand jury after he and other senior prosecutors listened to all the facts in this case and reviewed some of the evidence, that there's really no alternative but to take it to a grand jury and see where it was going to go.
Okay, thank you.